to Still and Moving Center's Gems from the Wisdom Traditions Conversation Circle, where we are taking up the topic of the work of the hands, which is represented in the reading that David just gave us by painting a picture or carving a statue. And I think that even though he talks about elevating the moral quality of the day, that in no way demeans that value of the hand in painting a picture or carving a statue. So this work of the hands seems to be very important to me, to what it actually means to be human. And it also is connected, I think, with the heart. So the work of the hands and the work of the heart seem very important to go together. Mother Teresa says, give your hands to serve and your hearts to love. Our speaker for today is Cliff Tillotson, who happens to be my husband. And he is a tireless worker who has been working with his hands his entire life. He did take a number of different shop classes when he was in school, and they still had such things provided to their students, especially to the boy students in those days. And he made a number of wonderful objects, some of which I think he gifted to his mother. He made a canoe in fiberglass class, I know, and he's been interested in boats ever since then. A lot of his work has gone into boats, and he went into landscaping using his hands on the land, and he continues to work on projects involving the land and the rock formations of the land in particular through our construction company, Prometheus Construction. He's also somebody who thinks in terms of analogy and correspondence. So whatever he talks about, he'll probably have some sort of analogical or symbolic representation that he's going to tell us about, in addition to the physical work of the hands. And just before he gets started, I want to recognize Jonathan Colbert, who just has popped on, who was somebody with whom Cliff did a lot of his work of the hands. I also want to recognize the work my dad, Ray Ocker, who's here with us, has done. I've my whole life long watched him working in garden and working on different things in his shop. So welcome everybody, and I'll let you take it away, Cliff.
Thank you, Renee, and thank everybody for showing up. I'm just going to try and maybe get the conversation going. I think we probably all have wonderful things we can share about the hand and how amazing feature of our anatomy the hand is and what it can do. I mean, there's 27 bones in the hand, the nerves, there's zillions of nerve endings in the hand. You hear about the healing touch of the hand, Jesus laying his hands on people and then also washing the feet of his disciples. And there's so many things about the hand and all the amazing things it can do. In Eastern philosophy, there's the mudras that can be made with the hand. In Hawaiian culture, all the expressions, Mary, that can be done through hula with the hands. I know you know a zillion of those. So the hand is just this amazing thing. But the thing also about the hand is it's so close to us. We use it all the time that we kind of take it for granted. And Renee wanted me to kind of prepare for this little presentation by reading this book, Shop Class as Soulcraft. So I kind of went through it, and it's a really good book. I enjoyed it. But the theme I felt that he was driving home a lot in that book was that through physical work, through manual labor, one can enrich one's self-worth and dignity. He was basically propounding the idea that through physical work, through work with the hands, is a good way to foster dignity or self-worth. And I thought also of a quote by Thoreau on this subject, where he said, how can you expect a harvest of thought without a seed time of character? In other words, that our self-worth is something that we can actually develop and grow in ourselves, our dignity. Our dignity as human beings can actually be enriched and developed, but how can we do this? And this author is saying, ideal in many ways, by working with our hands, we can, as a culture, as a society, individually, we can increase our own sense of self-worth. So I thought I would just kind of share a little story with you about someone who basically had lost their dignity, had lost their self-worth, and how it was restored. And the story is about the chief of staff of the lieutenant governor here in Hawaii, Josh Green. His chief of staff, Brooke Wilson, was taking a walk in Chinatown not too long ago, a couple months ago, and she came upon a kapuna, an elder woman, slumped over in a wheelchair with no clothes on, just sitting there with no clothes on, a homeless woman. And Brooke was stunned by this, the complete unacceptability of it. But everybody else that she kind of noticed were just walking around, kind of, this person had now become invisible and was like a discarded person on the sidewalk. But Brooke quickly rushed out to a store and got some clothes for this woman, and then called the police to help her transport this woman to a village of transition over in Waimanalo, where people that have been homeless can come and slowly work their way back into the larger community. And so this is I'm going to show you a little slideshow of this woman. Her name is Charlotte. I'm just going to play these slides while I talk about her. So she was taken over to Blanche's little village or communal village of mini homes where people live. This is Blanche and this is Charlotte here. And they're serving food in this picture right here. And so working with their hands, serving food, working with others who have been homeless. Actually here, she's campaigning for Josh Green. And I've watched her over the last few months and watched from that state of having like no self-worth, no dignity, through joining with these other people in this community, using her hands, working in this is their communal kitchen, serving meals with others, and joining in many of the manual tasks on this. It's kind of a farmland. I think the next slide is their farm that she's helping work that land there with the other residents. This next slide is of a fellow named Carl. I don't know exactly what plant he's planting there, but to see someone going from almost no self-worth, no individual dignity, to someone who has been able to, like a plant, that's now being nourished and watered, to grow again and restore her self-worth, her dignity, through working with others, with her hands, and just the support that she's gotten there. So anyways, I just thought I'd share that little story, that it's very much, it seems to be the case that through manual labor, if it's done in the right way, people can enhance or foster human dignity. And so I asked myself the question, what is it about physical labor that can help one to enrich one's self-worth? And I started to think about the idea that that's in many wise beings have said that we as human beings are a microcosm of the macrocosm. In other words, everything in the universe, in all of its many planes, visible and invisible, are represented in some way in the human being. So if we, in our endeavors, if we do things that are kind of aligned with nature, with the universe, then that's how I think our dignity can grow. And so I was thinking, well, how does the universe work? And the word universe in itself has the idea of unity in it, universe. So the universe is a unity, it's interconnected. So very often when we work with our hands or work physically, we're able to, it's very clear often the worth of what we're doing. We can see that what we're producing has an actual value to a larger whole or to others. So in that sense, it's connecting to the larger whole when we can actually manifest things in into the world and not have our work be what he calls in this book kind of abstract work, where you don't really see the results of your work. The other thing about the universe is that in everything from a flower to a galaxy unfolds from within without, unfolds from the invisible into the visible. And so when you do a project with your hands or physically, it really starts in the invisible realm. It starts with visualization, with imagination. And then you have to engage the mind to start to plan how you're going to actually bring this visualization, what you see in your mind's eye, your imagination, into the world. You have to get your materials, you got to get your tools, you got to figure it all out, in what order you're going to do the work. And then you bring that work into existence, into manifestation. That's kind of in line with how nature works too. And the third thing is about the way the universe is that everything being connected. You can imagine a flock of geese flying or school of fish flying in harmony. Oftentimes when one works in the manual trades, it's done as a group, as a crew, and you work together. You all may have different roles in building a house, building a boat, or whatever your physical endeavor is, but there's a synergy that comes from joining with others and working as a crew, versus what he describes in this book, where in the more, I don't know, office setting type of thing, where they instead of having crews, they have teams, but it's such an abstract thing, versus a crew where you're joking with each other and you're going through it and you have these kind of deeper bonds. In the book, he describes the dysfunction of the office, often of the office environment, with the cartoon Dilbert and the TV show and movie The Office and so forth. Whereas the work can be so rewarding, when one is doing it with others that have the same, are striving for the same end result, which is maybe building a house or what have you. Gandhi often talked about the importance of blending the head, the hands, and the heart. And the Buddha spoke about right livelihood as part of the Eightfold Path. And Kant, who we have a quote from Kant for this week, he talks about the hands being the, the outside brain of the human being. One of Kant's teachings or ideas was the idea of the moral imperative. And the moral imperative is that human beings need to see each other as ends rather than means. So it's the idea of when we're all working together to farm the land together or build a house, there's not usually so much of a hierarchy as, say, Amazon.com might have or so forth. Renee's brother worked in the .com world and the Silicon Valley world for his whole life, and he found it very frustrating because the managers that were above him didn't know as much as he did, and yet they were bossing him around. And there's also the dissatisfaction of not really seeing the results of your work. So he, in the last few years, he left that whole world and decided he's going to start his own business smashing trash. And he's finding it super rewarding. He has these trucks that drive around and in these roll-off boxes full of trash, and he crushes all the trash down. And just that physical work of him and his crew he comes home, charged by it every day. Just the fact that he's doing something that actually saving his clients money and saving room in the landfills because everything is compacted more, but just the satisfaction of doing something where you can actually see the real results of it. So to try and imagine, I think, a future culture, future society where instead of our self-worth isn't measured by our net worth, to see like in education, that's the main thrust of our educational system, is to help people develop and foster their self-worth, their human dignity. Because upon human dignity, if you think about it, all the other virtues, all the other qualities of our character are on top of that basic foundation of our sense of self-worth. So how can we have our educational system and our careers help, and our economy not so much being based upon competition and capitalism, but more upon fostering oneself, the self-worth of all the individuals in that particular group. I think in the Declaration of Independence, I think that's part of what Thomas Jefferson is striving at when he says that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. In other words, all human beings have human dignity by just being a human being, and that in any realm where one is taking advantage of another or using someone else's labor unfairly for one's own benefit, not only that person's dignity is reduced, but one's own dignity is being reduced. But to imagine a society where everyone sees each other not as a means for one's own aggrandizement, but as an ends in and of themselves, and to have that kind of community to live in, I think is a great ideal to imagine. And I think working with the hands is a one way that we can move in that direction toward a more fair and more equitable society in the world. So there you go. There's a few thoughts.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm remembering as you're speaking, Gandhi asking all of his satyagraphies, all his people who were working towards the independence of India from the British, to get a spinning wheel, because so much of the clothing that they were wearing was being provided by the British. It was their cotton that was being used, but made by the British in British factories into cloth that was then sold back to the Indians. So Gandhi said, okay, we've got to make our own cloth. So he had everybody use their own spinning wheel to make cotton into thread that then got woven into fabric called khadi. And so that was kind of an emblem of self-dignity, I think, for the Indians winning their independence from Britain, was to be wearing clothing that had been made by their own hands. And he also talked about the importance of bread labor, that everyone should be using their hands, no matter if they were, up in the highest classes of society. They should do something every day using their hands, and nobody should be excluded from it. And he and his wife had a big argument, evidently, over cleaning the latrines, which was considered to be something only to be done by the hands of the outcasts. They finally both agreed that they both should be cleaning latrines with their hands, tools in their hands, I'm sure. Jonathan?
Oh, yeah, you can see that I'm, just had just a little bit of a comment about the Gandhi spinning wheel thing. My understanding is that when they were coming up with the flag for India, that some people wanted to have the Ashoka wheel, which represented the universality of all the religions and so forth, which is a great symbol. But Gandhi actually was disappointed with that. Actually, he wanted the spinning wheel, because he thought that that's what really brought the dignity of the people to the fore, and that was the main thing. Apparently he lost out in that debate, and they did go with the Ashoka wheel. So that was just something with that. And then Renee, you mentioned at the beginning that Cliff had, I had worked with Cliff, for years and years. And I just wanted to tell you a little story about something I learned from Cliff. Cliff taught me the elegance of economy of motion and action. And just to watch Cliff work is just a magnificent thing. And I'll tell you something really simple. It's almost embarrassing because I didn't figure it out myself. He said that when you're working with a wheelbarrow, it might occur to me before I put the dirt in the wheelbarrow to aim the wheelbarrow in the direction that we're going to go. But I thought that was a head, heart, hand thing, because I mean, he taught me here's another one that Cliff taught me. He said, all work has a mental quality to it. It's not just flopping around. It's thinking things through and then training your body, your head, heart, hand to be in tune. And that's never left me. So I want to thank you, Cliff, for that.
Well, thank you, Jonathan.
I'd just like to add to the mental quality. I think a lot of people, especially if you get a higher degree or you're involved in abstractions of one kind or another, or even computers of one kind or another, that we kind of forget the fact that how we define work in the first place, one way to define it is that it entails judgment and intuition. Because if what you're doing doesn't involve intuition or judgment, that means it's somebody else's judgment and you're not doing work, you're doing something else. So true work really does involve judgment, but for some people, the way they cut the grass, the way they think about it, goes back to what Cliff was saying. The way you think about how you cut the grass, how you prepare for it, how you manage one grass as opposed to another grass. So that's where that's the source of the dignity, is people being able to use their judgment and their intuition. And it isn't about whether you're coming up with the next strategic plan for America or cutting the grass. It's the time and care that you take to generate the best outcome. And if you're doing work, that means you're probably doing it. It's not just reverie, it's work, meaning that you have to also have the dignity of a result that's serving someone else. Work is serving someone else. Otherwise, you're just in reverie or spacing out or something like that. So so work really does have this wonderful mental quality of creativity and intuition for everyone. Potential.
One of Cliff's work advices for me that has always served me well is to make sure that I have the right tool. And if I don't, it won't go as well. And it's worth taking the extra time and effort to get the right tool to accomplish the task at hand. And I think that has symbolic significance as well in the rest of our lives. How do we make sure that we're using the right tools to be effective in what we're doing?
I find that in gardening, there are two benefits that occur to me. One is that it's a bit like you're in a meditative state, as I try to find when I'm practicing yoga, and you clear your mind of everything, and you concentrate on pulling that weed appropriately. I think the other thing is that it's very nice to watch things grow and to look at what you're accomplishing in your gardening that's beautiful, like the way you arrange the planting and things like that. So it all blends in with what you were saying about the hands and the mind, Cliff.
Yeah, there's something so rewarding working in the soil, I think. Just that magnetic connection between one's hands and the earth and watching things grow because of it.
Yeah,
And in putting one's, like you're saying, one's mind to it as well, in terms of organizing, figuring out which plants go where and all that. Yeah, I think that in particular, working the land with one's hands, it has such a great properties to it in terms of feeling for one's well-being, for one's self-worth.
yeah.
Yeah. Our theme for this year is being truly human. And so this topic of the work of the hands, to me, is very deeply connected with this concept of being truly human. And whether I am going to my own garden and harvesting lettuce and kale and so on that I've grown myself, or I'm going out into the wild and, I just so loved this when I was a kid in California, harvesting elderberries or blackberries from the land. There's something that at this deep soul level is so satisfying. And so I'm wondering if there's something about that, use of the hands to collect our food that isn't just really deeply built into our very being. And I just wonder about other people's experience along those lines.
You reminded me a couple of things. One is I'm reminded of the opening scene from Stanley Kubrick's 2001, which was a representation of the evolution of human consciousness into what it means to be human. And it was the use of a tool. The apes were gathered around, and one of them happened to pick up something and figured out, now instead of just gathering berries, now maybe we can hack the bush down and gather more berries. And our ability to make changes in the world through the use of tools seemed to be what, in that representation, what it meant to be very human.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you also, Cliff, you said something that just sparked an idea in me. I wonder if our imagination isn't just the mind of God working through us. I know that's a bit abstract from our topic at hand, but you stimulated a thought in me that I'm going to spend some time on.
Could be. I mean, I don't think we've plumbed our depths.
I can give you
most of us. I know I haven't plumbed. I feel there's a lot more deeper I could go, but I haven't gone there yet.
Here's another quote from Mother Teresa that I just I saw recently. It goes something like this: "I am simply a little pencil, writing pencil in the hand of God." And whatever somebody considers God to be, there's all kinds of definitions. It just for some people it can just be the greater universe. That somehow we are mirroring, like Cliff was saying, the macrocosm within the microcosm, that just kind of in the way that we see in nature, even if it's a little frond of a fern, all those tiny little pieces of the frond are the same kind of pattern as the larger furl of the frond, which actually then mirrors other spiraling patterns in our universe. And there's something about that patterning that seems to run through the universe. Diana.
What has bring to my mind with all we're talking about is living in the present moment. that when I'm working in the garden or when I'm doing, I don't really use tools. I mean, I work in the kitchen, but I don't use saws and stuff like that. I don't think it's a good idea. But even in painting or even in writing, it's like, what kind of care do I take to be in the present moment when I'm really, and I think you hit it, David, when I'm really in that present moment and working, whether it's be building or on the earth or writing or painting, if I'm in that present moment, I feel like I'm in the flow, or I feel I'm in this intuitive knowing. And it does take, I love what you said about work taking judgment and intuition. And I think there is that. And I also think when you said time and care to do the best outcome to serve someone else, I just, it reminds me of when we truly do it with our heart and our soul, whatever it is, that we are contributing to that sense of peace, or that sense of being used and being not used, but being used, a channel to create whatever we're creating. And I really think it, not looking in the past, but really being in the present. I think sometimes people that use all those big tools, they really have to be in the present. They could cut off their hands or whatever they do with those big tools. And so it's like, I could do it with a kitchen knife, but when I'm doing that, I still have to be very careful. It's like, how do we stay present and become that intuitive vessel of surrendering to that moment? And I think when we do that, because we are all one, that we are contributing to that feeling of peace and giving and service to others, because we really are in a consciousness that allows us to be used in that way.
Mary, did you have a comment?
And I don't do well in the sun outdoors, but I was thinking of that little cartoon that you have in the kitchen at the Still and Moving Center, where there's a he's an old guy, and he comes into the kitchen and the sink is overloaded with plates and cups and glasses, and he goes, it's just a cartoon. And so then he goes, oh, I guess I gotta clean up. So he starts washing, gets everything cleaned up. And at the end, he feels so good because everything is clean. The kitchen looks straight. And so I can empathize with that. It's the small things you do that mean a lot. And you may not touch the world. Most of us will never be somebody on the front page of a magazine, but to the people around us, we certainly are important. And when you talk about tools, I remember the saying, work smart, not hard. And that takes a little time to develop that, but I'm very grateful that people have shown me that it's, you can work smart, you don't have to work hard. Thank you, Cliff. Amen.
Thank you, Cliff.
And Mary has used her hands to such a wonderful extent for our hula halau, or hula school, and sewing all of the hula costumes for every performance that we've done, and for all of the children who take classes from her daughter Malia, who's our kumu hula, our hula teacher, and talk about the intentionality behind work as she's running the cloth through the machine. She's doing her prayers. She's praying for the person who's going to be wearing that skirt. And so it's built into the very fabric that they will be putting on. I'm seeing Melissene's online, and Melisene is somebody who uses her hands to hold a camera, and she does it really effectively. I'm wondering if Melisene has any comments she'd like to make.
Sure. I really appreciated this. I thought learned a lot to think about. That was really beautiful. So thank you, Cliff. Thank you, everyone, for sharing all your experiences and insights as well. And I definitely I also really loved the thinking about how beautiful and intricate the hand is. I thought that was very helpful.
It seems to me that when you are holding your camera, you are using that instrument as an extension of your eye,
Yeah.
but also as an extension of your mind or your vision or your imagination.
Yeah, for me, I've had multiple clients say that when I'm doing photos that it feels like I am sort of acting as like a channel for whatever you want to believe in, the divine or different things. So I've had multiple clients also say things like that as well, in addition to like my conscious imagining something.
Renee and I were just at a blessing over on Maui in a really sacred spot called Io Valley. And it was interesting, the Kumu that was doing the blessing, how they had to get into a kind of a state of humility in order to let the forces there, the energy in that valley come through him. And I'm thinking of the Bhagavad Gita, where in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna really emphasizes a lot in that the renunciation of the fruits of action, that one needs to let go of the results of things so that more of this energy can come through one. And it's like that, I think, David, a little bit is we want to be channels, just like you're saying, to open ourselves up so that the positive energy of the universe can flow through us. I remember hearing this one paddling coach from Tahiti. His team kept winning the Molokai Hoi year after year after year. And one of his teachings to his paddlers was that when you're sitting in the canoe, you want to be able to feel the mana, the energy of the ocean come through the canoe, through your feet, and run through your body, and then explode off with your hands through the paddle back into the ocean when you take each stroke, so that you're basically this kind of cyclic current of tapping the mana of nature and then releasing the mana back, and you're just more like kind of like the filament in a light or something like that. But it's almost like getting, like you're saying, in that particular zone where you're in the present and this energy is flowing through you, but you're not taking credit for it. Something like that.
Jonathan, thank you.
Well, speaking of current, let me see if I can do this question. I'm thinking of almost like electricity. Some people, as you know, Cliff, when they get on a crew with other people, not only is there a synergy, but there's like one person who's just like sparks the whole thing. And it isn't so much what they say, it's kind of how they work. I was wondering if you could talk about some of that.
Yeah, well, that's a wonderful idea, Jonathan. I mean, yeah, you're always like it when you're trying to put together a crew, you're always looking for that person that's going to set that example, that standard that kind of inspires everybody to give it their best. And it's interesting that you would think if a job is going really well and a group is in that synergetic, like Buckminster Fuller talks about synergy, that synergetic flow together, at the end of the day, instead of being tired, they're energized, actually.
Yeah.
And they don't go home all exhausted, because not the leader isn't someone that's kind of lording over and telling them how to do and managing the job, but is more in, like you're saying, inspiring them. The word inspire, kind of like that, the idea of breathing has something to do with breathing kind of enthusiasm into the other people, and the feeling of self-worth.
Yes.
By watching something manifesting as a crew.
Yeah.
It's something that's, it's kind of like, I don't know, it's not something that's super obvious, maybe, but it's something that everybody shares in together as a collective, in a collective enterprise like that. But you're right, there's usually somebody that sparks the match, lights the match. So.
And even the banter and the chiding that goes on is part of that, it seems like.
Yeah.
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 But it's playful,
We were living in a house while our house was being built. We were living in a rental house, and there was a whole project going on of restoration in the house next to that where we were staying. And every morning I would wake first to the sound of the birds and their cheerful chorus, and then to the sound of the men arriving to the house to do their work. And there must have been a really great leader of that group, because I would hear them just slapping each other on the back and all these big chuckles of laughter. And then they'd work a little bit, and then something else would bust them all up again all over the place. And I just thought, I love this as much as I love hearing the sounds of the birds, as hearing men happily at their work. It just made me feel like this is one of the best sounds in the whole world. Oh, plus children laughing, little children laughing.
Yeah, I'm rebuilding my son's house over here in Hawaii right now, and my whole crew is Tongan, and they just love to laugh all day long. And it's just so wonderful working with them and their senses of humor. They'll laugh at the silliest, absurd things, but it's that sense of humor and just silliness that goes along with a good work crew getting into that zone is super delightful. I mean, you talk, they look at rocks and they go, oh yeah, that's a 1 Tongan rock, or that's a 2 Tongan rock. Oh, that's a 3 Tongan rock. They are the funniest natural comedians on the planet, I think. I guess a couple of things I could add to what Jonathan said earlier is that story you told about the wheelbarrow is, if you know something has to get done, you just accept the fact that it has to get done, then I consider it what I call a good lazy, is trying to find the most efficient way to get it done. It's like, maybe I'm just lazy by nature, but I also know this project's got to get done. So how, damn it, is the easiest way to get this thing done, which is a form of creative thinking. You know, what is the right tool, piece of equipment, and so forth. And one thing that two things that I've really enjoyed about working in the physical world, one of them is just bathing in the realm of potential, is just living in that realm, the abstract realm of visualization, imagination, and just seeing the whole project or whatever coming to life in one's imagination, such that when you actually do it in the physical world, it's almost an afterthought, and it goes very, very, very smoothly. You know, that's really enjoyable. And the other thing that I've really enjoyed recently in projects, like working on a boat or on a house or even our projects, is to see them as an integrated system and how all these different aspects come together, you know, and all these different systems, like the body has so many systems in it, nervous system, circulatory system. Nature has done this amazing thing, creating this being, this self-conscious being with all these harmoniously functioning systems in it. And then when we're out there trying to make a boat with, you know, I don't know, electrical system and you know, flotation and just all these different things that go on, or a house with electrical and plumbing and roofs, and there's all these different systems that go into making something that one is creating function well. So I've really enjoyed that particular thing in physical work of systems analysis and how to make systems work better together. So those are a couple of things that I've learned working in the physical world, or enjoy doing in the physical world.
And the human body is the system. It's got all these systems in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Could I ask a question about that lady that that was found and she really
Yes.
needed help and all that?
Yeah, Charlotte. Yeah.
I almost don't like to put too much attention on her, but what do you, could you kind of review with us kind of what happened with, not what went wrong or whatever, but instead the blow by blow, step by step process of her getting back up on her feet again and starting to do something and feeling better about herself and just getting back going again.
Well, so she's part of a what we call over here a kauhali, or a village of previously homeless folks over in Waimanalo that I've been involved with, that this amazing woman, Auntie Blanche, has created in her backyard of mini homes. And so all the residents there were at one time, they have life experience, lots of life experience. Most of them have been in an encampment or on the beach for over a decade. Most of these folks, and a lot of them have had serious drug problems and so forth. But under the loving umbrella of Auntie Blanche and her family, and being brought into their ohana, their family, they seem to, most of them are like, I'm over the drug thing at this point in my life. And so by joining together with others that have had that lived experience, and they're supporting each other mutually like that through, in many ways, many physical elements of the what needs to be done on this in this community. It's amazing to watch the self-transformation. I've seen that with all of the folks that have come into and through this village, is their integrity, their sense of self-worth. You just watch it in their physical being. And I think in some of those pictures I was showing, you could see the ones toward the end, the clarity in her eyes toward the ones at the beginning, which were taken a little bit earlier, where her eyes were still kind of clouded over. So I don't know if that answers your question, Jonathan, but that's where she lives now, with many, like 70 other people who were previously homeless, some with children and so forth. And just that sense of community. But
Yeah.
You hear this thing about addressing homelessness, that it's, housing first.
Right.
And I've kind of changed that to, because housing is so expensive. Well, we just need to help people have safe, stable, and secure shelter. Because it's like you could create a community of 25 mini homes for the price of one apartment almost. It's $250,000 for an apartment, where it's maybe 5,000. People just need to have this, be able to get into a place that's safe, stable, and secure, and then have a sense of community where they can decompress and renew their sense of self-worth. But so I've gone from housing first to shelter first to community first, but now it's dignity first. We need to get dignity. And so all the people that were walking by Charlotte in the wheelchair and turning their eyes, they were seeing that person as a disposable person. But if one simply goes and sees somebody that is houseless or homeless and looks them in the eye, sits down, talks story for a little while, sees them as an equal to oneself, but going through trying times, having some trauma in their lives, that's helping them to begin to restore their dignity. And that's to me, the first thing is bearing witness and not being able to solve their problems, but being able to feel the problems, and then, I don't know, in some way recognize them as an equal human being to oneself. And that's what happens when someone comes into Blanche's ohana, is they are part of the family. And then all of a sudden you just watch them start thriving again. Just like a plant that didn't have any water, and now you give the plant water, and all of a sudden they're all flourishing again, all healthy and so forth, or not completely healthy. I mean, when you think about someone living homeless for so long, it's like, instead of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, it's sustained stress disorder. Because when you live on the street, you're under stress all the time. So it's really hard after someone's been in that state for a long time for them to, easily re-enter the larger community. But this kind of transitional form of communal living is a big step to help people re-enter the larger community, I think. And you can see it with Charlotte. I think she's been there only 3 months.
And Cliff, almost as soon as they arrive, aren't they expected to contribute? Isn't, some sort of give back built into their everyday?
Yeah, everybody's got tasks. They all have tasks. Yeah, everybody has to work, but in a good way.
Yeah.
I see
True.
Truth has got his hand up over there.
Oh, yes, also, I imagine that being homeless, you have like poor oral hygiene, and then like all that bacteria and stuff could get into your system and affect your brain or different things. And then, there's just multiple things that lack of sleep, so you're not really getting good sleep. And also it reminded me of the word daemon, which means inner voice, because when I was on the way to work this morning, there was a woman who was talking to herself. And that's just, I could see the connection between inner voice and demon, like driving out the demons. In terms of old psychology, if you had someone who was like homeless, walking around talking to themselves, then that's like an inner voice that is informing them, and so that could be seen as bad. And then but thanks for mentioning that sustained stress disorder. I wasn't aware of that phrase.
I think I invented it.
Really?
Oh, that seems very apt.
I think it's totally apt.
Well, it seems to me, in my observation, I'm asking myself, I don't want to be a generalist, but all the people that have been on the street for a long period of time, there's some quality that they seem to share. And I think it's living in a state of kind of trauma and a state of being ostracized and judged as being not part of the larger community, as other, for so long that it's hard to, overcome that. It takes time. It's not simply giving someone an apartment that's going to help them totally deal with the psychological trauma of living on the street for so long. It's very complicated, I think, how to really bring people back once they end up on the street for a long time, bring them back into the larger community and help them restore their mental health if that's what's needed. It's beyond my abilities to really know the right path there. And I think everyone has their own individual path, but I do see this certain trait of a sustained trauma, I think, that a lot of them share, that have been out there for so long.
Do you mind if I ask you, to me, it kind of boils down to being included or excluded in a way.
Yeah.
I mean, the difference between someone with a job and without a job is the person with a job hasn't been fired yet, and they're still being included.
Right.
And so all these people, by not being included, like, would you say something about work and inclusion?
And can you wrap it around back to the hand, since we're getting to the top of the hour?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Oh, by the way, a chiropractor means hand healer.
Oh, beautiful. I didn't know that.
I was just thinking of that statement. I think it's in the Bible somewhere that idle hands are the workshop of the devil. It's kind of, it's pretty heavy, but having people working with one's hands, is a way of, I think, having those energies flowing through one, and just seeing, Charlotte slumped over in that wheelchair, just in a state of passivity. And I think that happens with people, when they're out there on the street, is they become kind of very vulnerable and passive. But by re-engaging them, working like in the garden at this village and so forth, and working with others, it's really a big step in restoring one's dignity and self-worth, just by joining with others and working with one's hands.
And that in turn reminds me of the Ganesh principle, which has to do with Ganesh being he who does the most work with the least effort, because it's done so mindfully, right?
Because I think that's one of the things that I get off on in terms of physical work the most is when you have a repetitive task, that each time you do that task, if you're asking yourself, how can I do it better?
Yeah.
You know, each time. And so you get into like kind of almost a dance of efficiency, and you're exploring ways of moving your body, your hands, and so in such a way that it's done, like you're saying, Renee, with the least amount of effort, but you get the most done. There's something very satisfying in
So,
that.
Cliff, I want to really thank you so much for all of the insight you gave us from your decades of personal experience with using your hands.
These gnarled up hands, blisters and calluses.
But your reflection upon what you have been doing has really enriched us, showing us that example of someone whose life has been transformed, being engaged in work again in the community and using her hands is really an intuitive offering that you made to us, as well as many different analogies. So I really thank you deeply for what you shared with all of us, and thank everyone in attendance for your contributions. Everybody, just thank you so much, each person.
Good to see all of you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Cliff. Thanks, Renee.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks.